I'll tell you the moment it broke me. 3 chairs down, 1 empty seat, and laughter that didn't belong to me. That was my Christmas. The photograph came at 7:46 p.m. sharp. Sent by accident. Or maybe not. A group shot. My son's living room all decked out, red ribbons, twinkling lights, stockings above the fireplace. The grandkids in matching pajamas, holding mugs of cocoa with whipped cream piled high. His wife, Melanie, grinning wide, one hand resting on her sister's shoulder. And my son, Peter, at the head of the table like he was king of some cheap parade. The caption under it cut sharper than any knife, full house. Full hearts. Christmas with all the family that matters most. I stared at it so long the phone screen went dark, then lit again under my touch. I zoomed in. I counted the chairs. 7 taken. 1 empty. My chair. I had baked a pie that morning. Pumpkin with cloves, the way Peter used to beg for when he was little. "Make it extra spicy, Mom," he'd say, his freckled face smudged with flour as he stole bits of dough from the counter. I baked it, wrapped it in foil, set it by the door, waiting for the call to come pick me up. That call never came. Instead, the photo came. And the silence. The pie sat cooling while the snow piled against my porch steps. Outside, the air was sharp enough to cut your lungs in half. Neighbors' houses glowed gold and warm. Through the glass, I could see silhouettes moving, families clinking glasses, kids tearing at wrapping paper, someone lifting a baby into the air. Every window screamed belonging. Mine reflected only me, hunched in my old cardigan, waiting like a fool. I didn't cry right away. No, my anger comes first always. Hot and fast, like the kettle I slammed back on the stove. The sound rang through the empty kitchen. My cat, June, bolted under the sofa. And I stood there staring at the phone again, as if maybe the caption would change, as if maybe someone would realize what they'd written. But they didn't. Not one text. Not one call. It wasn't the first time I'd been left out. Thanksgiving had slipped their minds, too. Mother's Day was a gift card emailed 3 days late. Even my birthday, Melanie sent a Facebook message with 3 balloon emojis. But Christmas? Christmas was mine. The one holiday I held sacred. The one holiday I thought they wouldn't dare erase me from. I looked at the photo again, my finger pressing hard against the glass. The stockings on the mantel. The chair with the red cushion. Mine, empty. It hit me then. I wasn't forgotten. I was deleted. The difference matters. Forgotten means someone remembers too late. Deleted means they made the choice before the night even started. That chair wasn't empty because of chance. It was empty because I wasn't wanted in it. I picked up the pie, still warm, and carried it to the trash. My hands didn't shake. My breath was steady. I lifted the lid and let it fall inside with a dull thud. The smell of cloves and pumpkin lingered in the air, sweet and bitter all at once. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the old ticking clock above me. Snow kept falling. Silence wrapped the house tight. And something inside me snapped clean, like a frozen branch. I pulled out the folders. Receipts, bank statements, copies of tuition checks, the down payment I had given Peter and Melanie for their first house, $48, 000 I had scraped together from selling my late husband's tools and cashing out a retirement account. All of it neatly labeled in my handwriting. All of it proof that I had been their foundation. And this was how they built on me. By erasing me. I laid the papers out across the table like cards in a game. My fingers traced each line. Mortgage co-signatures. Loan repayments that never came. Babysitting expenses I covered. Christmas presents I bought from Santa when their budget was too tight. My whole life reduced to receipts. The phone buzzed once more that night. A new photo posted. This time, just the grandkids, raising their cocoa mugs in a toast. Melanie's caption. Teaching them early what family means. That was when I laughed. Not a happy laugh. No, a low, bitter chuckle that echoed in the empty kitchen. If they wanted to teach those kids what family meant, I'd teach them too. But my lesson would be unforgettable. Because nothing burns colder than a grandmother left out in the snow. And they had just lit my fire. I woke up the next morning to silence so thick it pressed against the walls. Snow still fell outside, soft but relentless, burying my front walk in white. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, staring at the spread of papers I hadn't touched since midnight. Every receipt was a bruise, every loan a scar. And suddenly, I didn't feel old. I felt armed. I started with the house, the one Peter and Melanie called their home, the very one I'd made possible with that $48,000. I still had the cosigner paperwork in a folder. My name sat there in black ink, steady and sure. Temporary guarantor, they had called it. Temporary my ass. It was permanent in the way a chain is permanent until you cut it clean through. I called the bank. Yes, I said, voice calm, steady, polite. I need to review all linked agreements on the Hemsworth mortgage. The young man on the other end clicked at a keyboard for a while. His voice wavered when he came back. Well, ma'am, technically you're still listed as a guarantor. You'd have to file a withdrawal of obligation, but it requires updated financial proof from the primary holders. I smiled into the phone. So if I withdraw, they'll need to prove they can stand alone? Yes, ma'am. That was my first note. Pull out guarantor rights. The next folder was tuition. Thousands I had wired over the years for the grandkids' private school. Melanie always said, it's temporary. Just until Peter's bonus clears. Funny thing, those bonuses never did. But I kept every email. Every thank you that wasn't. I stacked them in a neat pile. Then I opened my old laptop and made copies. PDF all tidy, each labeled with the date and the words funds not repaid. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about evidence. Evidence of who they were when no one else was looking. At noon, I put on my boots and walked through the snow to the post office. My breath puffed white in the air and my knees ached with each step, but I didn't slow. I opened a P.O. box under my name. Quiet. Private. No one but me would know where my new mail landed. On the way home, I passed their house. I hadn't meant to, but my feet carried me there like a magnet. The driveway was crowded. Peter's SUV, Melanie's shiny sedan, her sister's beat-up Honda. Through the curtains I saw shadows moving, laughter spilling out faint through the glass. I stood on the sidewalk a long time, snow biting at my cheeks, until one of the kids darted past the window. Ruby, 12 years old now. I used to rock her to sleep with lullabies no one else remembered. She didn't look toward the glass. Didn't see me standing there. I turned away. Back home, I thawed out by the radiator and made myself a sandwich I barely tasted. Then I picked up the phone again. This time I called Lena, an old friend from church who'd retired after years working in probate law. She was sharp as a tack and had no patience for liars. Bring me everything, she said after I explained. Every receipt, every document. If you've been holding this family up on paper, it's time to stop. I told her I'd come tomorrow. That evening, Peter finally called. My phone buzzed across the table, his name lighting up the screen. For a moment, I thought about letting it ring out, but I answered. Mom, he said, too cheerful, like someone covering a bruise with powder. Hope you had a nice Christmas. The kids wanted me to tell you they missed you. Did they? I asked, voice flat. A pause. Of course. We were gonna call, but the day just got so busy. I let silence stretch, long enough for him to sweat. Finally, he cleared his throat. Anyway, how are you? I saw the pictures, I said. Another pause. Oh, that. Melanie just wanted to post something quick. You know how social media is. I know exactly how it is, I said coldly. It shows you the truth people are too cowardly to say out loud. He started to stammer something, but I cut him off. Enjoy your full house, Peter. Then I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't explain. I just started writing. That night, under the yellow glow of my desk lamp, I drafted a list of every asset still tied to my name. Accounts, investments, the small pension that dripped into my checking each month, and of course the will. My hand trembled only once when I crossed Peter's name off the beneficiary line. But it was a weakness. It was release. The next morning, I'd put ink to paper with Lena. And after that, Peter and Melanie would learn something they'd never forget. Family isn't who you toast to in pictures. Family is who holds the pen. The morning I walked into Lena's house, the air smelled of lemon cleaner and peppermint tea. She always kept it that way, sharp enough to sting your nose, sweet enough to remind you you'd been welcomed. Her dining table was covered in neat stacks of folders. "Show me," she said, and I spread everything out. Receipts, mortgage papers, tuition checks. Every thread of my silence stitched into neat manila envelopes. She put on her glasses, scanning quickly, her finger tapping against certain pages. "Well, hell," she muttered. "They've been balancing their whole life on you." I nodded, and laughing while they do it. She leaned back in her chair. "Here's the good news. You're not powerless. The house? You can't yank the deed out from under them, but you can revoke guarantor status. That means they'll have to prove income on their own. Might make their little castle shake. And the accounts?" I asked. "Freeze every automatic transfer. Tuition, utilities, car insurance, whatever's tied to your name. You don't owe them stability anymore." Her words were a balm. For the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt seen. She scribbled on a notepad and slid it across to me. A checklist. Withdraw guarantor. Close transfers. Rewrite will. Transfer assets to a trust outside their reach. Start today, she said. No announcements. No warnings. Just action. I tucked the list into my purse. I will. On the way home, the snow had stopped. The world looked scrubbed clean, bright, but cold as glass. By noon, I was at the bank. The young teller looked nervous when I asked to speak with the manager. A woman in her 40s with crisp hair and a sharper suit brought me into a glass-walled office. "I want to revoke guarantor status on my son's mortgage," I said, calm as if I were ordering tea. Her eyebrows rose. "That's unusual, ma'am." "May I ask why?" "Because it's mine to revoke," I said flatly. She typed printed forms, slid them toward me. "Once this is filed, the lender will require updated financial statements from your son and his wife." "Good," I said. "Let them prove themselves for once." Her pen clicked as I signed. It felt like cutting a rope that had been choking me for years. Next, I had her walk me through every automatic payment. Tuition fees, utility bills. Even Melanie's gym membership had been sliding out of my account. "Stop them," I said. "All of them." "Yes, every single one." By the time I left, my purse was heavier with stamped forms, but my chest felt lighter than it had in decades. That evening, the phone rang. Peter again. I let it buzz twice before picking up. "Mom," he said, voice tight this time. "The bank called. Something about the mortgage. They said they need more documents from me." I sipped my tea slowly. "Sounds like something you should handle." "Why would they call me?" Did you change something?" "I changed a lot of things," I said, my tone cool. "Starting with how much longer I'm going to carry you." Silence. Then a sharp breath. "Mom, this isn't funny. Do you know what kind of mess this causes?" "I know exactly," I cut in. "The kind of mess that happens when a man lives off his mother's sacrifices and calls her disposable behind her back." He tried to argue, but I hung up before he could finish. For once, it was my silence that left him scrambling. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table with a single candle burning. Snow pressed against the window, the flame flickering in its reflection. I thought about all the times I'd bent myself into knots for that boy, handing over checks, babysitting at the drop of a hat, swallowing the sting of Melanie's corrections. No more. The first cut had been made. They might not feel it yet, but soon the weight of their world would shift, just enough to crack their pretty little picture frames. And I wasn't done. Not by a mile. The will came next. The next morning, I dialed Mr. Altman, the attorney who'd handled my husband's estate years back. His voice was the same, steady, patient, the kind of man who had seen every version of family betrayal walk through his office. "Mrs. Monroe," he said warmly, "what can I do for you?" "I want to rewrite everything," I said. And I want it airtight. He didn't ask why. He didn't have to. He just set an appointment. When I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window. My hair was wild, my cardigan stretched thin, but my eyes looked alive again. Peter and Melanie thought Christmas was over. But for me, it had just begun. Mr. Altman's office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same green shutters, same brass door handle polished to a shine, same faint smell of floor polish and paper. He rose when I entered, his snow-white mustache twitching into a smile. "Mrs. Monroe," he said, shaking my hand. "It's been too long. Let's see what brings you in." I handed him the folder of thick, heavy with years of enabling. "I want a new will." Everything changed. He scanned the first few pages, then looked up at me over his glasses. "Removing your son, I presume?" "Not just removing," I said coldly. "I want him and Melanie written out completely. No backdoors. No disputes they can drag through court." He nodded, tapping his pen against the desk. "A living trust may be your answer. Keeps things airtight. Keeps them locked out." "Do it," I said. For the next hour, we went line by line. House into the trust. Savings into the trust. Pension, stocks, the life insurance policy I'd never even told Peter existed, every cent redirected. The only name left was Ruby, my granddaughter. She still had a child's softness in her, even if her mother had tried to mold it out. Ruby had slipped me drawings when she was little, always of the two of us holding hands. Maybe someday she'd need proof that someone had loved her without condition. "Leave it all to her," I said. Altman hesitated. "She's a minor. We'll need to create a guardian for the trust. Then make me the trustee while I live. After I'm gone, assign it to a professional. Not Peter. Not Melanie. No family signatures except Ruby's." His pen moved swiftly. He didn't ask questions. He'd seen too much in his years to be surprised. When the papers were drafted, I signed with steady hands. My name in ink, sharp and deliberate. "This will hold," he assured me. "Good," I said, "because I'm done holding them." By the time I left, snow was melting into gray slush along the curb. I walked slow, my boots squelching, but my chest felt light. That evening, the phone rang again. "Peter." I let it ring out. A voicemail followed. "Mom, look, the bank's on my back about documents. They're threatening higher interest if we can't prove income alone. Why would you do this right now? Melanie's furious. The kids are stressed. We don't deserve this." I played it twice. Once for the words, once for the tone. No apology, just inconvenience. I deleted it. Then, for good measure, I opened the tuition folder on my desk. I dialed the private school's office. A pleasant young woman answered, her voice too chirpy for January. "This is Marilyn Monroe," I said evenly. "I'd like to terminate the automatic tuition payments tied to my account effective immediately." A pause. "Ma'am, those accounts are registered under your son's household." "And charged to my account," I cut in. "I'm revoking authorization. They'll need to make direct payments from now on." She stumbled over her words, but confirmed. "Yes, ma'am. We'll notify them tomorrow." I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and let the silence hum. One more thread cut. The fallout came quickly. 2 nights later, Peter showed up at my door. He didn't knock like a son visiting his mother. He pounded, loud and impatient, his breath puffing white in the cold air when I finally opened the door a crack. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded, snow clinging to his coat. I kept the chain on the door. "Doing what?" "You know damn well what. The mortgage. The tuition. Melanie's card got declined at the grocery store. You've humiliated us." "Humiliation requires an audience," I said flatly. "All I did was stop paying for you." His face flushed red. "You're punishing us." "For what? For one Christmas photo? That's insane." I stared at him a long moment, then said quietly it wasn't one photo. It was years of erasure. Years of being treated like an afterthought in the family I built. "You made your table, Peter. I'm just not sitting at it anymore." He gripped the door frame like he wanted to break it. "Do you have any idea what this does to us financially? We can't just cover those payments overnight." I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled, slow and sharp. "Sounds like a personal problem." And I closed the door. His muffled voice raged on the porch for another minute before he stomped back to his car. The engine roared, tires spinning on the icy street. I didn't move from the door until his taillights vanished. The next day, Melanie called. Her voice was honey poison. "Marilyn," she cooed. "We're concerned. Maybe you didn't realize how disruptive this is for the children." I realized, I said. "You'll break this family apart," she pressed. "You already did," I snapped. "I'm just finally admitting it." She inhaled sharply, then tried a softer angle. You know, if you help us through this month, we can talk about healing, about moving forward. I laughed, low and bitter. Moving forward means moving without you. And I hung up. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window. Outside, the neighborhood glowed with leftover Christmas lights, most half-burned, sagging in the snow. My reflection in the glass looked older, yes, but sharper too. The first real cracks had appeared in their world. Mortgage stress, tuition panic, grocery embarrassments, and all of it traced back to the one person they thought they could erase without consequence. They thought they'd left me with an empty chair. What they didn't know is I'd built the whole damn table, and I had just pulled it out from under them. The morning after Peter's tantrum on my porch, the snow had hardened into ice. The neighborhood looked frozen mid-breath. My windows glittered with frost, but inside I was warm, wrapped in a shawl, sipping coffee, watching the steam curl upward like smoke from a quiet fire. On the table lay the trust packet Mr. Altman had couriered over. Heavy, official, my name printed on every page like a declaration. For the first time in years, my life was mine alone. I flipped through the documents slowly. Property secured. Bank accounts locked. Investments rerouted. Beneficiaries stripped clean except Ruby. Her name, written clear, was the only thread of blood I'd chosen to keep. By 10 o'clock, I was at the bank again. I requested a safety deposit box. The clerk, a young man with shaky hands, slid me a small brass key. Inside, I placed two things, the original trust papers and a handwritten letter sealed in an envelope. On the front, I wrote only one line, for Ruby. The truth of who stood for you when no one else did. I closed the box and walked out lighter. By midweek, the cracks in Peter and Melanie's life widened. I didn't have to guess. I heard it from the neighbors. Mrs. Holloway from 2 doors down stopped me at the mailbox, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. Did you hear? The Hemsworth's mortgage went under review. Bank might hike their interest. They're panicking. I smiled faintly. I'm sure they'll manage. But I knew better. That evening, Melanie herself confirmed it in a voicemail, her voice stripped of honey this time. Marilyn, we got notice from the bank. If we don't submit proof of income, they'll raise our monthly payment by nearly $1,000. $1,000? Do you understand what you've done? Oh, I understood perfectly. I deleted the message without reply. Friday brought the next blow. The private school's billing office must have made their call. By noon, Peter's number lit up my phone again. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, a text arrived. They said tuition isn't covered. Ruby and Alex will be pulled from classes if we don't pay next week. Fix this, Mom. Fix this, Mom. As if I was a faucet they could turn on whenever they pleased. I typed a reply, then erased it. Instead, I let silence be the answer. The kind that crawls under skin and gnaws at nerves. That night, I baked. Not for them, never again for them. No, I baked for myself. A peach cobbler, golden and bubbling, the smell filling my small kitchen until even the cat crept out from under the sofa to linger near the oven. I ate a slice hot, steam curling up against my cheeks, and thought, they can choke on their empty plates. I'll feed myself from now on. By Saturday, Melanie snapped. She showed up at my house, heels clicking too sharp on my icy walkway. I opened the door just enough for her painted smile to press through. Marilyn, she began, voice taut as wire. We need to talk. No, you need to talk, I corrected. I'm just listening. She blinked, regrouped. You're hurting your grandchildren. Do you want them pulled out of school? Do you want them humiliated? Humiliation. I repeated softly. Like an empty chair at Christmas? Her lips tightened. That was a misunderstanding. I let out a dry laugh. A misunderstanding with perfect seating arrangements, a perfect caption, and a perfect lie. She dropped the smile. Fine. You're bitter. But dragging the kids into it? That's cruel. I leaned against the doorframe. No, Melanie. What's cruel is teaching them family is disposable. I'm just removing myself from the garbage bin you tossed me in. Her cheeks flushed, her breath visible in sharp bursts. Peter says you're being manipulated. That attorney's filling your head with poison. Funny, I said, voice low. It's the first time my head feels clear in years. She straightened her coat. her eyes narrowing. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, and closed the door in her face. Through the glass, I watched her stomp back to her car, slipping once on the ice. I didn't move to help. Sunday morning, the church bells rang across town, muffled through snow. I didn't go. Instead, I pulled out my old address book, the one with frayed tabs and fading ink. I flipped through the pages, crossing out names Peter, Melanie, even little Alex, who barely looked at me anymore. One line through each, clean and final. When I reached Ruby's name, my hand stilled. I didn't cross her out. I drew a star beside it instead. Then I closed the book. The next week, their world buckled. Peter left another voicemail. This one panicked. "Mom, the mortgage adjustment went through. We can't cover it. Do you understand? We could lose the house. We need your signature again, just until things stabilize. Please, Mom, just until spring. Just until spring. Just until. Always just until." I sat at my kitchen table, listening, and felt something I hadn't in years. Power. Not power to destroy. Power to finally stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even set a place for me at their table. I didn't call back. That Friday night, snow fell again, blanketing the street quiet. I lit a candle, poured myself a glass of wine, and watched the wax drip steady as a heartbeat. Somewhere across town, Peter and Melanie were scrambling, calling banks, arguing over bills, counting coins they thought they'd never have to count. And me? I was here, steady, unshaken. They had erased me from Christmas. Now I was erasing them from the life they thought was theirs. And the sweetest part? I'd only just begun. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between the grocery flyers and utility bills. A thick envelope, heavy paper, my name typed clean across the front. Inside, confirmation. The trust was officially active. Every cent I owned, every piece of property, every bond and account now sat in a vault of my own making. Peter and Melanie's names were nowhere. Their power of attorney revoked. Their access terminated. I traced the notary seal with my finger. It felt like armor. By noon, I made another move. I called the county clerk's office, asked about removing my name from any lingering joint titles. The clerk was polite but firm. "Once your trust is filed, you'll need to re-record any deeds. Would you like to proceed?" "Yes," I said. "Erase me where they think I'm still holding them up." That same afternoon, Peter called. Again. His voice on voicemail was thinner now, stripped of arrogance. "Mom, we just got a letter from the school. Ruby and Alex are suspended until tuition clears. They're humiliated. You don't understand what this is doing to them." I let the message sit. Then I saved it, not for guilt, but for proof. Proof that my silence was finally louder than his excuses. The real blow came Thursday. That morning, I walked to the community bank with Lena's checklist in my purse. At the counter, I asked to close the joint savings account I'd once set up just in case. Back then, Peter had begged, "It'll make emergencies easier, Mom." I'd signed the papers without a second thought. Now I thought plenty. The teller tapped at her keyboard, frowned. "You're the primary holder. He's only listed as an authorized user. We can remove him immediately." "Do it," I said. 10 minutes later, my signature was the only one that mattered. Peter's card declined before sundown at some gas station across town. I know because he left a voicemail full of fury. "What the hell, Mom? My card got shut down in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how that looks? I can't even fill my tank. What are you trying to prove?" I didn't answer. The voicemail joined the pile. By Friday, Melanie cracked. She called from a blocked number, her voice shrill. "You've ruined us, Marilyn. The bank's threatening foreclosure. The school's cutting the kids out. Now the credit cards? Are you insane?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm finally sane. You'll destroy this family." I laughed, sharp and cold. "Family? You already did that when you left my chair empty." She spat something about lawyers, about suing me for emotional damages. I almost choked on the irony. When she hung up, I poured myself tea and let the steam blur my glasses. They were spinning, desperate. And desperation makes people sloppy. That weekend, the whispers began. At the grocery store, Mrs. Holloway sidled up beside me. Saw Peter's car repossessed right out of his driveway. Men with tow trucks. Loud scene. I raised an eyebrow, dropped oranges into my basket. Is that so? Oh, yes. Whole neighborhood saw. Melanie screaming on the porch, the kids crying. Embarrassing. I almost smiled. Not because of the children's tears, God knows they deserved better parents, but because Peter and Melanie were learning what public humiliation felt like. They had paraded their full family online. Now the world would see the cracks. Sunday night, Peter himself came again. He didn't knock this time. He pounded. When I didn't answer, he shouted through the door. You think you've won? You think cutting us off makes you the hero? Everyone will know what you did. I'll tell them you abandoned us. I sat in my chair by the window, tea cooling in my lap, and let him shout. Let the neighbors hear. Let them see him red-faced and raging at the door of the mother he'd erased. When his voice broke into hoarse silence, he finally left. I closed my eyes and whispered, Merry Christmas, Peter. The next morning, I made my boldest move yet. I drafted letters, neatly typed, signed, notarized, addressed to every one of their creditors. Mortgage company, tuition office, even the credit union that held their car loan. Each letter included copies of the revocation papers, proof that I was no longer guarantor, no longer cosigner, no longer safety net. I mailed them all from the post office, my hands steady, my back straight. And as I slid the envelopes into the slot, I thought, this is the sound of chains breaking. By the end of the week, Peter and Melanie were drowning. Calls from collection agencies. Notices nailed to their door. Whispers in church pews and at the grocery line. I heard it all secondhand, never from them directly. But I didn't need their words. The silence between their calls told me enough. They were unraveling. That Friday evening, snow fell heavy again. I lit the fire in my small living room, sat back in my chair, and let the warmth seep into my bones. On the mantel, one photograph remained Peter as a little boy, gap-toothed, grinning, holding the pumpkin pie he'd helped me bake at age 7. I looked at that boy and whispered, You're gone, but I'm still here. And then I set the photo face down. The lesson had only begun, because they thought an empty chair meant weakness. But they were about to learn it meant war. The knock came at dusk. Not the frantic pounding I'd grown used to from Peter, but 3 deliberate raps. Calculated. When I opened the door, Melanie stood there in her best coat, lipstick perfect, eyes sharp as broken glass. Behind her, the snow reflected the porch light, turning everything pale and brittle. Marilyn, she said, voice sugar smooth. We need to talk. I leaned against the frame. Funny. You only find your way here when you need something. Her smile twitched. We're family. Families go through rough patches. No, I said flatly. Families set an extra plate, even when there's barely food to go around. You left my chair empty. The smile dropped. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Listen, the bank's pressing foreclosure. Tuition's gone. Peter's credit is wrecked. We're drowning. But this, she lifted her chin. This doesn't have to end ugly. If you reinstate your guarantor status, we'll put you back in the picture. Holidays, dinners, the kids, I laughed, low and sharp. You think I want a seat at your table? I built the dam what it's made from. Her eyes narrowed. Then what do you want? Revenge? To see your son on the street. What I want, I said, leaning forward, is for you to choke on the silence you fed me for years. Her jaw clenched. For the first time, she had no retort. She turned on her heel and marched back into the night, heels stabbing the ice like knives. The next morning, Peter showed up. He didn't come alone. Ruby was with him, cheeks flushed, eyes darting nervously between us. Grandma, she whispered. Can we come in? I let her step through. Peter followed, shoulders hunched like a scolded child. The kitchen felt smaller with him in it, his presence like a storm cloud. He sat at the table where so many of his school projects once sprawled, and now his voice broke against the silence. Mom, please. We're losing everything. The bank's foreclosing in 60 days. The school won't let the kids back without full payment. We can't keep up. I know we messed up. I know Christmas was wrong. But don't punish Ruby and Alex for our mistakes. I looked at Ruby. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her hands twisted in her lap, nails bitten to the quick. You left me outside in the snow, I said quietly. You erased me with a caption. I was stupid, Peter said, voice trembling. I thought Melanie was right, that we had to look perfect. I didn't think about what it meant. No, I said, my tone sharp. You thought about it. You just didn't care. Ruby finally spoke, her voice small. Grandma, I miss you. That broke something in me. Not enough to bend, but enough to ache. I stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out the envelope from the safety deposit box. I slid it across the table. Peter reached for it, but I held up a hand. Not for you, I said. For her. Ruby's eyes widened as she took it. What is it? The truth, I said. One day, when you're old enough, you'll read it. You'll know exactly who paid for your schooling, your roof, your holidays. And you'll know who threw me away. Peter's face crumpled. Mom, I cut him off with a sharp gesture. You want forgiveness? Earn it. But you won't earn it through my bank account. He sat there a long moment, staring at the wood grain of the table. Finally, he stood. His voice was hoarse. Then this is it? You're just done with us. I was done the moment you chose a caption over a call, I said. Ruby clutched the envelope to her chest. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. Grandma, can I still come back? Even if. She glanced at her father. Always, I said, softer now. But you come back alone. With truth, not excuses. She nodded quickly, as if memorizing the condition. Peter lingered by the door, his voice breaking. I don't know how to fix this. I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. Maybe you don't. They left in silence. Ruby looked back once, her small hand tightening around the envelope. Peter never turned. That night, the phone rang again. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A man's voice introduced himself as a reporter from the local paper. Mrs. Monroe, I've been tipped off about your son's foreclosure. I'm told you were the guarantor who pulled out. I'd like to hear your side. I almost laughed. Melanie had probably thought leaking the story would shame me into relenting. Instead, I said, write whatever you like. Just make sure you spell my name right. And I hung up. By the weekend, the story was everywhere. Local family facing foreclosure after grandmother withdraws support. Neighbors whispered. Some pitted Peter. Others pitted me. But the comments online? Brutal. She gave them everything and they erased her? Good for her. Boundaries matter, even at 70. Imagine deleting your own mother for Instagram clout. Melanie must have read every word because by Sunday evening, she sent me a text. I hope you're happy. You've humiliated us. I typed back one line, not yet. That night, I pulled out the last folder from my cabinet, the will, the trust, the notarized letters. Everything locked tight. The final strike was ready. And when I played it, Peter and Melanie wouldn't just lose their house or their pride. They'd lose the illusion that I was ever theirs to erase. The foreclosure notice hit their door the first week of February. Bright orange. Bold letters. Final warning. Neighbors saw it before Peter tore it down. But word spread fast in towns like ours. By evening, the Hemsworths weren't the shiny family from Christmas photos. They were gossip. I didn't smile when I heard. Not exactly. But I didn't frown either. 2 days later, Peter showed up again. Not with anger this time. Not with Ruby. Alone. Shoulders sagging, eyes hollow. He looked 10 years older than he had at Christmas. He stood on my porch, snow clinging to his boots, and whispered, I don't know what to do. I let him stand there. The cold wind pressed against us both. Finally, I said, you could have started with honesty. His mouth opened, closed. Then he walked away. That Friday, I visited my attorney one last time. Mr. Altman, I said, laying a sealed folder on his desk, this is the final version. The trust is done. The will is done. All the letters of intent are attached. And I want one more clause added. He adjusted his glasses. Which is, if my son or his wife attempt to challenge any of this, the trust doubles to the women's shelter in town. They won't get a dime for dragging my name through mud. His eyes twinkled. A scorched earth clause. I like it. I signed the papers, my hand steady as stone. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with one candle lit. The house was quiet, save for the radiator clicking. I poured myself tea and looked around at the walls I'd lived within for decades. I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. I was finished. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. The very next evening, Ruby came alone. No text, no warning, just a small knock at dusk. When I opened the door, her cheeks were raw from the wind, her eyes swollen from crying. "They're fighting," she whispered. "All the time. About the house. About you. About money. I can't stand it." I pulled her inside, wrapped a blanket around her, sat her at the table. She clutched the envelope I'd given her weeks ago. "I didn't open it yet," she said, "but I carry it because it feels like armor." Tears burned behind my eyes. I reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "One day you'll read it, and you'll understand every move I made." She nodded, shoulders trembling. "I already do." By March, the Hemsworths were out. The bank seized the house. Movers dragged furniture across the icy driveway while neighbors watched from behind curtains. Melanie screamed at the men, her voice cracking. Peter just stood with his hands on his knees, broken. I didn't watch from afar. I didn't need to. News travels. Instead, I sat at my window with a slice of warm bread and thought, that chair they left empty cost them their table. A week later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. From Peter. Handwritten, shaky. "Mom, I can't undo what we did. I can't change the photo or the words or the way we treated you. I thought money made us strong. I thought appearances made us whole. But we were hollow without you. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed you to know I'm not laughing anymore." I folded the letter carefully, placed it in the same tin box that held every other proof of who I was to them. Then I closed the lid. Forgiveness was not the same as return, and I had no return left to give. That Easter, Ruby came again. She helped me plant marigolds in the front yard. Dirt smeared her hands, her nails, her sleeves, and still she laughed. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked, glancing at me nervously. "Mind?" I said. "I've been waiting years for someone to dig with me again." We planted until dusk, until the yard smelled of soil and new life. And in that moment, I realized something fierce. My revenge had already bloomed. Not in their ruin, in her resilience. Months later, people still whispered. About the foreclosure. About Melanie's tantrum at the grocery store. About Peter working double shifts just to cover rent. And sometimes about me. She cut them off, you know. Cold as ice. No, she survived. Don't mix the two. I let them talk. I owed no explanations. On Christmas Eve, 1 year later, I set the table for two. Just me and Ruby. Simple dinner. Candles flickering against the window frost. She looked across the table, her eyes steady. "Do you miss them?" I sipped my wine. "I miss who I thought they were." She nodded slowly. "I don't." We clinked glasses, mine with wine, hers with cider. And in the quiet, with only the snow for company, I felt whole. They left my chair empty once. Now every seat in my house is mine to give. And I don't give to thieves. When they slammed that door, they didn't lock me out. They locked themselves in, and I threw away the key.